On July 6, 2023, the brutal reign of Mexican drug lord Michael Torres came to a shocking end in a prison cell.
The California State Prison is investigating this two inmates, Juan Martinez and Ray Martinez, attacked 59-year-old Michael Torres,
where he was brutally murdered in a chilling act of revenge for the countless lives he had destroyed. This gruesome fate marked a stark reversal of fortune for a man who once wielded immense power. But what drives inmates to exact such ruthless vengeance? And as we explore the gripping tales of 10 cartel members and mafia bosses who got karma in prison, what dark secrets will be revealed about the criminal underworld they once ruled? Number 10. Francisco Helmer Herrera Buitrago. Francisco Helmer Herrera's life came to a tragic end in prison, where he fell victim to a fatal attack by a fellow inmate under the influence of alcohol. Once a notorious figure, Herrera was often compared to the infamous El Chapo, with a reputation for ruthless tactics in the drug trade and a history of violently eliminating rivals. But Herrera's story began long before that fateful day in prison. Born on August 24, 1951, in Palmyra, Colombia, where he grew up in the Valle del Cauca region, which was a big part of his early life. During his high school years, Herrera delved into technical maintenance, a skill that would later secure him a job in the United States. Yet, it was in the streets of New York City where he glimpsed the allure of cocaine distribution, a trade far more lucrative than any he had encountered before. By the mid-1970s, Herrera's burgeoning enterprise caught the attention of law enforcement, resulting in his arrest and subsequent deportation back to Colombia in 1978. However, this setback proved to be a blessing in disguise. Returning to Colombia, Herrera set his sights on Cali, where he negotiated lucrative supply and distribution rights with the notorious Cali Cartel, solidifying his position as a key player in the burgeoning cocaine trade. Expanding his operations through Mexico, Herrera established himself as one of the foremost suppliers of cocaine to the United States. Not content with mere trafficking, Herrera ran an intricate and highly profitable money laundering operation, amassing wealth that surpassed the imaginations of most. His rising influence earned him the title of a cartel kingpin, granting him control over extensive trafficking routes. Yet, with power came peril, none more threatening than his fierce rival, Pablo Escobar. Herrera managed to evade the public eye until Escobar's relentless attempts on his life forced him into the spotlight. In 1991, the Drug Enforcement Administration Operation Kingpin marked a significant turning point in the battle against the Cali Cartel. The operation exposed the cartel's inner workings, leading Herrera to surrender to Colombia's search block unit. Despite being handed a comparatively lenient 14-year prison term, Herrera's circumstances remained extremely vulnerable and hazardous, with his life still very much at risk. Sadly, on November 6, 1998, inmate Rafael Angel Urbe abruptly ended Herrera's life during a routine football match inside the prison walls. Urbe's sudden and brutal assault consisted of 7 fatal gunshots to the head, inflicting grave wounds upon Herrera. Despite efforts to save him, Herrera passed away in the hospital as a result of the injuries sustained in the attack. Number 9. Michael Torres. Notorious Mexican mafia member Michael Torres, who once wielded control over criminal operations in the San Fernando Valley and exploited the Los Angeles County jail system for drug and extortion schemes, met a fatal end in prison, succumbing to a deadly stabbing. The deadly assault was orchestrated by 2 inmates, Ray Martinez and Juan Angel Martinez, yet their motivations remained enigmatic. Neither had apparent connections to Torres's cartel activities, with their criminal histories tainted by murders and other serious offenses. The burning question was, what compelled them to seek vengeance against Torres? As the narrative unfolds, we uncover Torres' origins in the San Fernando Valley street gang, known as the Sanfer Gang. His rapid ascent to prominence during the 1990s and subsequent initiation into the Mexican mafia cemented his reputation as a significant figure in the criminal underworld. However, his release from prison in the early 2000s marked a turning point, signaling a relentless quest for greater influence and wealth in his new chapter of life. Torres's insatiable ambition led him to forge alliances with cartel members, and together they orchestrated the export of drugs across the border. But his relentless drive for dominance came at a cost. A bitter rivalry with David "Smokey" Mendoza, a fellow Mexican mafia affiliate, culminated in a failed attempt on Smokey's life. The aftermath saw Smokey turn informant, sealing Torres's fate and paving the way for his second arrest. Torres's decision to represent himself in court during his trial, despite his limited education, proved to be a calculated move to extend his stay in Men's Central Jail. This tactic allowed him to maintain control over the prison's drug trade, imposing a significant tax on all transactions. However, this bold assertion of power also intensified animosities against him, ultimately leading to his end. In a bloody strike, Rai and Juan Martinez launched a brutal stabbing attack that inflicted mortal wounds on Torres. This vicious assault marked the abrupt end of Torres's dominance, cutting short his life at the age of 59 on July 6, 2023. Number 8. Joseph Hutchinson. On August 4, 2023, Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies were performing a routine security check at the downtown Los Angeles prison when they made a disturbing discovery. They found 51-year-old Joseph critically injured, suffering from multiple stab wounds, in his cell, which he shared with another inmate. Joseph's story intertwines with that of Michael Torres, whose recent death we discussed earlier. Like Torres, Joseph was deeply entrenched in the Sanford gang, known on the streets as Capone, for managing Torres's drug operations. His role extended from collecting money to enforcing Torres's commands, both inside the prison and throughout the San Fernando Valley. Despite his criminal convictions, Joseph's activities didn't cease upon imprisonment. He formed an alliance with Martinez, a member of the rival Rosemead gang, who assumed control of the jail after Torres's murder. Martinez trusted Joseph enough to oversee Torres's enterprise, a decision that ultimately led to suspicion and resentment among Torres's associates. They believed Joseph had betrayed Torres by collaborating with their rivals, a perception that likely contributed to his violent end. Details surrounding Joseph's death remain a mystery. Reports from fellow inmates on August 3, 2023, suggest that Sanford gang members infiltrated Mel Prison and swiftly executed Joseph at dawn. The next morning, he was discovered lifeless in a pool of blood. His demise marked a tragic conclusion to a life marked by crime and complex gang alliances, leaving questions about the circumstances leading to his untimely death. Number 7. John Gotti. John Gotti's story as an American gangster and mafia boss leading up to his death is particularly fitting for this video. Born on October 27, 1940, in the Bronx borough of New York City, Gotti Jr. grew up in a working-class Italian-American family amidst a turbulent environment influenced by the criminal underworld. Despite attending school in his youth, he soon dropped out and immersed himself in petty criminal activities. As he matured, Gotti became increasingly entrenched in organized crime, eventually ascending to become one of the most notorious leaders of the Gambino crime family. Alongside his brothers, Gotti thrived in the criminal realm, accumulating significant wealth. However, their illicit ventures attracted unwanted attention from law enforcement. The FBI's indictment of several of Gotti's associates for drug trafficking heightened fears within the crime family, particularly regarding potential reprisals from their boss, Castellano. This anxiety catalyzed Gotti's audacious move to eliminate Castellano, solidifying his authority within the Gambino family. Gotti's leadership style was marked by a flamboyant demeanor and outspoken nature, which set him apart from his more discreet counterparts in organized crime. Dubbed the Dapper Don, he cultivated a public persona that alternately fascinated and repelled the public and media alike. His lavish lifestyle and charismatic presence made him a polarizing figure, admired by some for his bravado and despised by others for his criminal activities. However, Gotti's empire began to crumble when his trusted underboss, Salvatore "Sammy the Bull" Gravano, turned informant for the FBI. Gravano's cooperation resulted in Gotti being charged and later convicted in 1992 for numerous crimes such as multiple murders, conspiracy, racketeering, obstruction of justice, tax evasion, illegal gambling, extortion, and loan sharking. Gotti received a life sentence without parole and was moved to the high-security United States Penitentiary in Marion. While incarcerated, Gotti battled throat cancer, ultimately succumbing to the disease on June 10, 2002, at the United States Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Springfield, Missouri. Number 6. Richard Kukinsky, the Iceman. Richard Leonard Kukinsky, notorious as the Iceman, etched his name in American criminal history. Born on April 11, 1935, he led a deceptive life. To the public, he was a devoted family man in suburban Dumont, New Jersey, but behind closed doors, he indulged in a dark world of violence and murder, hiding his true nature from his wife and children. Kukinsky's criminal career spanned decades, beginning with running a burglary ring and dealing in illegal pornography. However, his true notoriety came from his cold-blooded killings. Between 1980 and 1984 alone, he was linked to at least 5 murders, characterized by a ruthless pursuit of profit. His nickname, the Iceman, stemmed from his weird method of freezing one victim's body to deceive investigators about the time of death. To those who knew him intimately, Kukinsky was a man with a volatile temper, but also a provider. His family, unaware of his criminal activities, saw a different side of him, a loving father and husband. Yet, behind closed doors, he orchestrated deadly schemes, luring men under the guise of lucrative deals only to rob and murder them. He didn't hesitate to eliminate associates who posed a threat by turning informant. In numerous interviews, Kukinsky boasted of having murdered approximately 200 people using a variety of methods, ranging from unconventional tools like crossbows, ice picks, and even a bomb disguised as a toy, to more conventional means such as firearms and cyanide spray, which he claimed as his preferred choice. He shockingly stated that his first murder occurred when he was just 14, using homeless individuals as practice victims. However, the accuracy of Kukinsky's statements has been widely contested. Paul Smith, a member of the task force responsible for capturing Kukinsky, emphatically stated that none of the murders Kukinsky admitted to could be verified. Law enforcement agencies nationwide were unable to confirm any of the cases based on his incomplete disclosures. In addition to his claimed number of killings, Kukinsky also asserted that he worked as a freelance assassin for all 5 mafia families in New York City and the DeCavalcante family in New Jersey. He claimed involvement in high-profile mafia assassinations, including those of Carmine Galante and Paul Castellano. For the Castellano hit, he disclosed being personally recruited by Sammy Gravano, a close associate of John Gotti, to eliminate Castellano's driver, Thomas Bellotti. He also indicated he was hired by Gotti himself to carry out the abduction, torture, and murder of John Favara, who accidentally killed Gotti's son. However, these claims have been met with skepticism and outright dismissal by experts and authorities in organized crime. Jerry Capeci labeled Kukinsky as the Forrest Gump of mob hits, implying incredulity at his assertions. Sammy Gravano, after turning government witness, admitted to orchestrating Castellano's murder, but did not implicate Kukinsky as a shooter. Additionally, other mafia figures and biographers, such as Anthony Bruno and Michael Franzese, have publicly discredited Kukinsky's supposed involvement in these infamous crimes. Law enforcement finally caught up with Kukinsky through an extensive undercover operation that began unraveling his web of crimes in the late 1980s. He was arrested in December 1986 and eventually convicted in 1988 for 4 murders, which led to him receiving a life sentence. In a stunning admission in 2003, Kukinsky revealed that he was responsible for the 1980 murder of a New York City police detective. This confession added 30 years to his prison sentence, as the consequence of his brutal crime. Throughout his incarceration, Kukinsky claimed responsibility for a staggering number of murders, boasting figures ranging from 100 to 200 victims. However, many of these claims have not been substantiated. He also asserted ties to the mafia, alleging involvement in high-profile hits. In October 2005, after serving nearly 18 years in prison, Kukinsky was diagnosed with Kawasaki disease. He was moved to a secure wing at St. Francis Medical Center in Trenton, New Jersey. Despite his plea to doctors to resuscitate him if he went into cardiac arrest, his former wife Barbara had authorized a "do not resuscitate" order. A week before he passed away, the hospital reached out to Barbara asking if she wanted to revoke the order, but she declined. Kukinsky died at the age of 70 on March 5, 2006. Following a request from Kukinsky's family, forensic pathologist Michael Baden reviewed his autopsy report. Baden confirmed that Kukinsky's death was due to cardiac arrest and that he had been battling heart disease and phlebitis. Now, it's time for today's subscriber pick. In the harsh world of prison politics, two inmates stood out, not just for their crimes, but for their physical characteristics. Blackjack McCoy, a ruthless drug lord, wore an eye patch to cover an eye lost in a violent encounter. His reputation for cunning and brutality commanded respect from fellow inmates, who whispered stories of his exploits in hushed tones. Meanwhile, the Professor Hernandez, a former white-collar criminal, was confined to a wheelchair after a brutal attack by rival inmates. His intellect and strategic mind had earned him a reputation as a master manipulator, but his physical vulnerability made him an unlikely ally for anyone. Despite their differences, the two formed an unlikely alliance, with Blackjack providing protection and the Professor offering strategic advice. They bonded over their shared desire for revenge against the corrupt system that had wronged them. As they navigated the treacherous prison landscape, they uncovered a sinister plot involving corrupt guards and rival cartels. The guards were smuggling contraband and drugs, while the cartels were using the prison as a hub for their illegal activities. Blackjack and the Professor knew they had to act fast. They gathered a small crew of trusted inmates and hatched a plan to take down the corrupt guards and cartels. The Professor used his knowledge of the prison's layout and security systems to devise a strategy, while Blackjack used his street smarts and intimidation factor to gather intelligence and resources. As they prepared to put their plan into action, tensions rose. Blackjack's violent past and the Professor's cerebral approach clashed, causing friction between the two. The Professor worried that Blackjack's impulsiveness would jeopardize their chances, while Blackjack thought the Professor was too cautious. Their plan ultimately failed, and they were caught by the corrupt guards. In a brutal showdown, Blackjack was fatally shot while trying to protect the Professor. As he lay dying, the Professor was dragged away by the guards and later found dead in his cell, his wheelchair overturned, and his body battered beyond recognition. Their tragic end served as a stark reminder of the prison system's cruelty and the consequences of standing up against corruption. Despite their flaws and differences, Blackjack and the Professor had found common ground in their quest for justice. But in the end, it was their own demons that led to their downfall. What do you think about the tragic fate of Blackjack and the Professor? Share your thoughts in the comment section. Number 5. El Chino Antrax. In the shadowy world of cartel power plays and deadly alliances, José Rodrigo Arechiga Gamboa, also known as El Chino Antrax, stood out as a figure of both fear and fascination. His journey into the criminal underworld began innocuously enough in 1946, driven by a desperate need to secure financial stability for his family. Living quietly in his hometown with his wife and young daughter, El Chino's rise to infamy took an unexpected twist when he sought assistance from the notorious Zambada family, renowned for their extensive involvement in cartel activities. Starting with logistical responsibilities, El Chino swiftly demonstrated his skill in managing drug transportation. His progression included overseeing smaller deliveries initially, followed by developing a bold plan to smuggle large quantities of illegal substances into the United States. Employing stealth and strategic acumen, he eluded United States border patrols and accumulated wealth that multiplied with each successful operation. Yet, what began as a quest for financial security soon transformed into a lust for power and influence. Bolstered by his growing wealth, El Chino founded Los Anthrax, an armed squadron that provided security services to the notorious El Mayo Zambada of the Cali cartel. Under his command, Los Anthrax became synonymous with brutal and ruthless tactics, eliminating rivals in ways that struck fear into the hearts of their enemies. El Chino's empire, however, was not built to withstand the scrutiny of international law enforcement. In a sudden turn of events in December 2013, he was apprehended at an airport in the Netherlands, his identity marked by the distinctive Los Anthrax diamond ring he proudly wore. Extradited to the United States in January 2014, El Chino faced a litany of charges related to drug trafficking. Despite his initial notoriety and fearsome reputation, he surprised many by pleading guilty in March 2015. receiving a surprisingly lenient sentence of just 7 years and 3 months. Behind bars, suspicions arose about El Chino's true allegiance. Rumors circulated that he had struck a deal with authorities, leading some within the cartel world to view him with suspicion and disdain. Released under house arrest in March 2020, El Chino's newfound freedom proved short-lived as his former allies deemed him a liability. The fatal night of May 14, 2020, forever changed El Chino's fate. Sharing a meal with his sister and her husband at her home, the calm evening was shattered when a ruthless Kaloa cartel hit squad stormed in. What ensued was a chaotic firefight that raged through the night, with El Chino and his companions defiantly returning fire with assault rifles. As ammunition dwindled and hope faded, they were tragically overrun and gunned down in their own sanctuary. The next day, authorities uncovered the aftermath. 3 lifeless bodies were found in a black SUV in the serene town of Onesiloa. Among them was El Chino, formerly a commanding presence in the realm of drug trafficking, now brought down by the same brutality he once used to enforce his authority. Number 4. Joe Pegleg Morgan. October 27, 1993 was a day that cast a somber shadow over Joe Morgan's life. While serving a life sentence at California State Prison Corcoran, he received devastating news: a diagnosis of terminal liver cancer. Joe's life took a turn, exposing a vulnerable side behind his tough exterior. This sudden shift was a far cry from his formidable reputation as a ruthless and cunning figure in the criminal underworld, where his name struck fear into the hearts of many. Growing up in the harsh streets of Los Angeles, Joe's journey began with the Ford Mara Street gang, where he learned to navigate the treacherous landscape of gang warfare. But it was his encounter with the Mexican mafia that would forever change the trajectory of his life, propelling him down a path of both power and peril. His criminal journey took a dark turn in 1946 when a tragic and violent incident led to his arrest. Despite briefly tasting freedom through a daring escape, using another inmate's identity, fate caught up with him, and he found himself incarcerated in the formidable walls of San Quentin State Prison at a tender age. There, amidst hardened criminals and a relentless environment, Morgan's reputation for defiance and resourcefulness only grew. Upon his release in 1955, Joe's return to crime was marked by acts of robbery, culminating in a headline-grabbing heist where he and his accomplices seized over $185,000 from a bank in West Covina. However, his most notorious feat occurred in 1961, when he masterminded a daring escape from Los Angeles County Jail, using hacksaw blades concealed in his prosthetic leg to carve out a route to freedom. Dubbed Peg Leg by the media, this nickname highlighted his boldness and resourcefulness. Joe's life was a delicate balancing act between power and danger. His connections with cartel and mafia figures helped him rise to the top of the drug trafficking world by the late 1970s. He became a crucial figure in the distribution of drugs across California and beyond. However, his uncontrolled ambition ultimately led to his downfall. A string of armed robberies in the 1970s resulted in a life sentence in prison, ending his reign in the criminal underworld. It was during this final chapter of confinement that fate dealt its cruel blow. Diagnosed with terminal cancer, Morgan's health deteriorated rapidly, prompting his wife to appeal for his release on compassionate grounds. Tragically, Joe Morgan passed away before the courts could grant her plea, leaving behind a legacy steeped in both infamy and the harsh realities of a life spent on the wrong side of the law. Number 3. Hilberto Rodriguez. Next on our list is Hilberto Rodriguez Orella, a notorious leader of the Cali Cartel who followed in the footsteps of our previous convict, Joe Morgan. But Hilberto's story takes a different turn. Born on January 30th, 1939, in Palmyra, Colombia, he led a normal life until 1975, when he joined forces with his brother and Jose Santa Cruz Londoño to form the Cali Cartel. They dominated the early cocaine market, supplying a staggering 80% to the United States and 90% to Europe, reaping unimaginable wealth. Hilberto's bid to conquer the European drug market proved to be his undoing. In 1984, he ventured to Cali, Spain, to form alliances with local traffickers and the powerful Camorra Mafia. But this move attracted the attention of the DEA, placing him on their most wanted list and making him a target in Colombia. He was eventually apprehended in 1995 and sentenced to 15 years in prison, but was surprisingly released in 2002 after serving only 7 years. The United States government pursued justice, extraditing him to face drug trafficking charges. In 2006, he received a 30-year prison sentence. Despite appeals based on poor health, Hilberto's crimes were deemed too grave to warrant leniency. His infamous life ended on May 31, 2002, with his passing in a prison medical center at the age of 83. Number 2. Rodney J Delong. In May 2018, Rodney J Delong Jr. became a victim of a deadly prison assault that highlighted the dangers within correctional facilities, particularly when inmates are placed in close proximity due to administrative decisions. At High Desert State Prison in Nevada, prison officials face the challenge of managing their inmate population, leading them to house Rodney Delong with Robert John Stockton, an associate of the Aryan Brotherhood notorious for violence. Rodney Delong, serving a 9-year sentence for burglary, possession of controlled substances, and assault with a deadly weapon, found himself in a cell with Stockton, who had a history of lethal violence within the prison. Within an hour of their forced cohabitation, Delong was discovered lying in a pool of his own blood. Stockton had used a makeshift weapon, a shank fashioned from a metal cell door, to viciously stab Delong in the neck and eyes. Stockton's brutal act was not impulsive but calculated. It was later reported that Delong had been marked as an enemy of the Aryan Brotherhood in prison records. This designation meant that Stockton, as a member or associate of the gang, was expected to attack Delong upon sight to uphold gang rules or face severe consequences himself. The aftermath of this tragic incident underscored significant issues within the prison system regarding inmate safety, administrative decision-making, and the management of gang-related dynamics. Despite Delong having less than a year left on his sentence, the encounter with Stockton tragically cut short his time and highlighted the harsh realities faced by inmates categorized as enemies by powerful prison factions. Number 1. El Neto. In the seedy underbelly of Ciudad Juarez, a young man named Ernesto Alfredo Piñón de la Cruz emerged as a formidable figure, known on the streets as El Neto. Born on April 6, 1989, in Chihuahua, Mexico, his early brushes with crime went unnoticed by law enforcement, affording him a head start in a life of violence and vice. By 2007, Mexican authorities finally caught up with El Neto, identifying him as the ruthless leader of Los Mais, a notorious gang entrenched in kidnapping, extortion, and brutal murders. His methods were as infamous as they were horrifying. He was rumored to have sent the severed heads of his victims to those who crossed him. Despite his escalating notoriety, El Neto's criminal reign reached its zenith by the late 2000s, culminating in his arrest in 2009. Convicted on charges linked to 30 kidnappings, he received a sentence of 224 years behind bars in December 2010. For a man who had thrived on power and fear, prison seemed an inevitable cage, a grim contrast to the freedom and dominance he had once commanded on the streets. However, living up to his infamous persona, El Neto's saga didn't conclude with his imprisonment. On January 1, 2023, chaos erupted as he and 24 other inmates orchestrated a daring escape from CESO No. 3 State Prison in Ciudad Juarez. This audacious jailbreak quickly escalated into tragedy, resulting in the deaths of 17 individuals, including 10 guards, amid a tumultuous barrage of gunfire reverberating within the prison confines. For 4 days, El Neto managed to evade law enforcement, triggering a nationwide manhunt that captivated the country. However, his freedom was short-lived. On January 5, 2023, in the rough Colonia neighborhood, the Mexican army and state police finally closed in on their elusive target. A dramatic confrontation ensued, with gunfire erupting in the streets. In a last-ditch attempt to escape, El Neto made a desperate dash for his BMW, but it was too late. He was shot and killed, bringing an end to his life and his efforts to evade justice. The widespread circulation of images depicting his lifeless body evoked sobering thoughts. Maybe, in hindsight, dying in prison could have been a more compassionate fate for a man whose legacy was stained with violence and fear. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.